is the one I showed you earlier. And the code behind it, or the code that was created for that user interface, is basically like that. So if we open that, so let me now go to my view. If we open that main window, okay. Alright, and then view the SAML. Okay. So you would see that I did not write any single line of code behind code, no, so that I can actually communicate with the model. So I simply have a resource, a data context here, that is actually hooked with the static resource on the window. Okay, and a static resource is basically the instance of my view model, which is calculator view model. And this calculator view model, no, is basically a class that is residing in my view model project. Okay, I was able to instantiate this declaratively on the form, and that's it. And if you look at the calculator view, it has a property, okay, called add command there. And that add command is going to be used by the UI so that it can send a message that the button was clicked. Alright? So let's go back to the main window, and then let's drill down. Let's go below, and you could see that we have here a button. And basically, in the command property of the button, I said, I want you to be bound to the add command property of my data source. That's it. So when you click it, it will notify the view model that it was clicked, whatever, or this message was sent to the view model, and then whatever method that was delegated to handle that method or that command, no, is actually handled in your view model. All right. All right. So the view model, among other things, actually inherits from the iNotify property changed. Okay. So the purpose of the iNotify property changed, okay, is basically to automatically notify the view if there was a change or changes on one or more properties of the class that inherits or that implements the interface iNotify property changed. So that is basically the one responsible for making the magic of displaying the result of the two values added, no, in the UI. Because when we call or when we send a message to the add command, there is a calculation done inside the calculator view model, and one of the property was changed, and that was automatically notified or cascaded to the user interface. Okay, it's very powerful. So if you like your class to notify automatically your user interface when there are changes on the properties, your class must inherit from iNotify property changed. Okay? Alright, so there is also a pattern called observer pattern. So as the name implies, merong component na nag-observe. Okay? And the observer pattern was not invented by Microsoft. Okay? It's also found in the book of Gang of 4. Okay, Gamma et al. So if you like to buy the book of Gang of 4, the authors are Gamma et al. So they wrote a book about design patterns. These are patterns of source code, no, or architectural patterns that are actually solving yung mga recurring problems natin kapag nag-code tayo. Paano natin i-structure yung ating code. Alright, so according to Gang of 4, the observer pattern defines a one-to-many dependency between your objects so that when one object changes the state, okay, all of its dependents, no, are notified and updated automatically. So, di ba, magic yun? So, ibig sabihin, pa nag-change ka, lahat ng mga objects na nag-subscribe sa'yo, ino-notify mo siya agad. So, yun yung ginagawa ng observer pattern. So, if you have a publisher and then you have a number of subscribers, no, when there are changes on the publisher, all of the subscribers will be notified about the change. And in the context of WPF, if your collection has changed, for example, you have 1,000 users, okay, and one of the users changed the data source, okay, and that change can be cascaded or that can be notified to the other 999 users. Kita mo yung UI mo, nag-change yung value. Uy, may hacker. O kaya merong ghost, no? Pero hindi. Merong change yung ibang users, tapos yung UI mo, nag-change din. Kasi nino-notify sila. Okay. And that is one thing that is, that actually good, no? When we are using the WPF in our application. Although we are separating the concern, we can still achieve yung functionality sa gusto natin in terms of presenting data to the end user. Alright, so you could use the for an object, no, for a single object that has a number of properties, and you would like to to notify the user interface in terms of changes on the properties. So you create an object or a class that inherits from iNotify property change, and then you're going to create an event called property change event handler, which basically use so that whenever there are changes on the property, that is basically handled and the notification is cascaded to the end user, right? All right, so do not implement any observable pattern interface in the model. So what I'm saying here is, if you're going to implement the iNotify property change, don't implement that through your model. You implement that through your view model. Okay. All right. So these are the observable collections of WPF or in .NET. So we have the iNotify collection changed. So you could create a class that inherits from iNotify property change, but you can also come up with a class that will serve as a collection. Di ba? So, meron kang iList sa .NET, pero gusto mong mag-come up ng sarili mong collection. So, let's say, calculator. So, calculator collection. Okay? In order for your calculator collection to actually notify the UI when there are changes in the collection, your calculator collection must implement the iCollection change, okay, so that it will automatically, notify the UI. Ngayon, kung gusto mo na hindi ka na you don't need to actually create your own custom collection, you could actually use the observable collection. Okay, the observable collection will automatically notify the UI whenever there are changes in the data source, okay, or in your collection. So if your collection is read-only, you could use the read-only observable collection. So collection view source, this is a very powerful component in the WPF, wherein you can actually shape your data. You could filter your data, you could sort your data, you could group your data, based on a single data that you have taken from your data source. Isang beses mo lang kinuha yung data, ibinaid mo siya doon sa collection view, and then the collection view will now provide your user with different shape of your data. Okay, so that is the collection view. Alright, so you also need to create a class called relay command. So the relay command is going to be reused by many of the view model classes, in terms of relaying the command from the UI going to the view model and view model going to the UI. So if you look at the project that was created earlier, you're going to see that my view model has a relay command. And this one takes care of relaying the command from the UI to the view model and view model to the UI, so that you don't have to write a number of code in terms of relaying the command from between those two layers. Alright? So, data mapper was already mentioned or discussed earlier, and also in day 2, I'm not going to discuss this in great detail. But data mapper is basically, a technology that allows us to avoid writing, low-level code. Instead of writing low-level code, we can actually focus on working with the, writing the behavior of our real-world objects. So before I end, if there is any questions, you could actually ask questions.
Third question.
Okay, cool.
How can we use WPF with inline of web application?
WPF in line with
Some web.
for web, parang web.
Subs.
Okay. WPF has a subset called Silverlight. Ang marketing name ng subset ng WPF for the web is the Silverlight. Okay. So kung gusto mo mag-present ng data coming coming from a website, okay, pwede mo gamitin si WPF, or you could use the the WPF itself, no, that uses the Internet Explorer as a sandbox. Pwede rin full-blown WPF but using Internet Explorer, but you are limited to the IE browser. Kung gusto mong mas maraming browser yung makakagamit ng app mo, you will be using the subset, which is the Silverlight. But you could use the full-blown WPF for a web stack. Yep.
Sir, is view model different in MVC? Model view?
That's a good question. In MVC, typically we use the MVC for a web type of application. Okay. However, in MVC, you cannot really achieve yung tinatawag na 100% separation of concern, because if you follow for example, the Ruby on Rails MVC, your models are still used in your view, right? And if we follow the MVC, book, for example, in ASP.NET, your models are also used in the view. You could achieve the separation in the controller by introducing another class or set of classes, and we call that set of classes as data transfer object. Okay, so yun yung ginagawa. And well, basically the controller is also a mediator, similar to view model. Okay.
Web kasi has a concern of navigation But when you submit something to the web, where does it go? What kind of page does it present to you?
Yeah,
You don't really have that problem with forms because it's the same form by default. On the other hand, with web, you do not have the two-way communication, no? So you don't have the iNotify property change. So it's a bit different. That's why we don't really have MVC and
Although
forms.
Apple has MVC in their UI. Yeah, but Jerome was correct, no, in terms of really applying the MVC. You could really apply that perfectly in a web scenario. Kasi stateless. Pero kapag gusto mo ma-achieve yung like combination nga ni Jerome, yung like automatically you are notifying the UI for any changes, you have to use the MVVM. In Silverlight, fortunately, you could still use the MVVM, okay, with WCF RIA services. So, ang ginagawa dun sa WCF RIA services, ine-emulate ng RIA services yung objects from the server, okay, so that you could achieve the same kind of behavior, like if you want to notify automatically the UI with the changes from the data source, you could achieve that.
Yes.
I just have another question. As I have observed during 2003 application in the VB6, some of the icon files, your icons, are not, when you import it, it doesn't accept that there was an error. Is there such thing also in VB20?
Yung sa icon files, they changed